Singh, Mr. Bernier, and Mr. Scheer. We're going to move on with continue with the pipelines because there's been a lot of talk about this. The Legault government has repeated that in Quebec there is no social license. Mr. Bernier, Mr. Scheer, you're in favor of a pipeline, and you say that's your right under the Canadian Constitution, but do you not fear backlash, an anti-Canadian sentiment in Quebec or an anti-Quebec sentiment in Western Canada if you impose a pipeline, Mr. Scheer?
That is the reason for which I put forward the idea of an energy corridor, because I know that Quebecers would prefer homemade and Canadian energy. A lot of Quebec's energy goes to the United States, and they buy gas and petrol from the United States. This is nonsensical. I want Canada to be able to share its own natural resources from west to east. It's the best option for all Canadians and Quebecers.
The energy corridor that Mr. Scheer is proposing is going to take years to build. We urgently need a pipeline, and you're right about the Constitution and constitutional peace and the nation's unity, and that is why Albertans are calling for the right to export their oil to other markets in addition to the US market. And I don't think that Mr. Scheer will, in fact, go to the Constitution to force the construction of pipelines. But Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Scheer have the same stance on climate change. Mr. Scheer will put big price on big polluters, and we say that we're going to leave this up to the provinces. Quebec is doing very well. We should leave it up to the provinces to take firm action on the environmental front.
I think I can sum the situation up here for viewers. This is Mr. Pipeline, and this is Mr. Pipeline 2, and Mr. Trudeau, I'm not so sure. But I'm Jagmeet Singh. I will never force a pipeline on Quebec. That is clear.
Mr. Scheer?
The current plan put forward by Mr. Trudeau was to give huge exemptions for large polluters. Large companies that have a special agreement with government, taxpayers and Canadian workers have to pay 100% of their carbon tax. There are no taxes in my plan.
Hold on. You would place a massive exemption for the biggest emitters.
You will not tax anything. You won't win anything. With my plan, Canadians will no longer pay.
See what happens. We'll see what happens, Mr.
We will
Scheer.
invest in technology. We will fight against climate change in a global context. That is what is missing in all other platforms.
Go ahead.
Well, listen, Mr. Scheer wants to take Canadian taxpayers' money to combat climate change, but in other countries, abroad, and hand over billions of dollars to combat climate change elsewhere. But the fact of the matter is we need to protect Canada's climate back home. And the fact of the matter is that there are so much raw sewage that is dumped in our lakes, in our rivers. This is an increase of 10% vis-à-vis 2013. We need to invest in that and do that for Canadians.
500,000 children, young people, were in the streets demonstrating in Montreal, and they said action is urgently needed. Mr. Trudeau says a lot of nice things, but he doesn't do much. He doesn't work for people. What we need now is to give young people hope. We can say, yes, we can go ahead. We can get rid of subsidies to the oil patch. We can reinvest in clean energy. We can invest massively in public transit. We can act now, and we have to act right now.
Mr. Scheer, I have a question for you to relaunch the debate. You want to abolish the carbon tax. Is it not like granting people a permit to pollute for life?
Absolutely not. It doesn't give them free rein. Currently, there's no price on carbon in Quebec, but there's a cap and trade system in Quebec that Quebec itself instituted. Well, you're right. And the environment is a shared area of jurisdiction between the federal government and the provinces, and under the People's Party of Canada's plan, we will leave it up to the federal government to make sure our waterways are clean, and it's incredible. The city of of Montreal and the city of Vancouver had to take action against this raw sewage being dumped in their waterways. We want a clean environment, but not through the carbon
What
tax.
is clear is that with the Liberal government's plan, Mr. Trudeau gave huge exemptions to the biggest polluters. So when he put a price on carbon, it wasn't for big polluters, it was simply for everyone, for Canadian workers. And that is the problem with his approach. My approach will focus on technology through taxation, and not taxation, rather.
The problem with Mr. Scheer is that your plan was written for industry. That's unacceptable.
Very much, sirs. That ends our three-way debate. I thank you for your discipline.